today, Salman, very, very exciting news. We are interviewing Sally Capp, Lord Mayor of Melbourne. I guess both of us know her from her time at the Property Council. I sat on an event with her. I did an event with her on affordable housing a couple of years ago. So that was a great experience, and obviously doing such a great job at the City of Melbourne in such a difficult time.
It's wonderful that we're able to get Sally Capp to come on to lead the way. Sally Capp's been a wonderful, wonderful face to Melbourne over her last 2 years as Lord Mayor. I've been to a lot of events where she was speaking, and I think the fact that she's just so personable, friendly, and approachable has made Melbourne just a nicer, friendlier place with her at the head of it. I'm really excited to ask her, how she's coping with everything going on. I mean, Melbourne effectively has the strictest restrictions globally, and she's the Lord Mayor of the city. So there's going to be some pretty honest conversations that she'd be having internally about how to manage this, and this is something that she probably wasn't trained for or ready for.
I think one of the other really great things about Sally is she is so well connected to the business world, and I think with politicians at the moment, the better connections that they have, the better they seem to be coping with the economy during the pandemic. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing how, her plans for the City of Melbourne. The City of Melbourne has been so pivotal in getting the CBD up and running, and, the postcode 3000 strategy, 30 years ago now, but really was such a groundbreaker. You just, we'll probably need a similar type of policy, and really looking forward to hearing some of her views as to how we can move forward. I think one of the interesting things today was in the paper, the City of Melbourne has put forward $10 million worth of support for CBD businesses. So, looking forward to, hearing how that will work, and the ways, the types of businesses she expects it to help.
Also, back in the 90s, I wasn't really doing my job back then, but they were a lot looser about liquor license laws just to help stimulate the market and get people back into the city. Interesting, is that something that they're going to be doing? There's a lot of public spaces that the City of Melbourne runs. What are they doing to help stimulate traffic and attract more people into the city? But most importantly, I'm just so excited to wear a suit and tie. I haven't worn a suit and tie in months. It took me like 4 times to get this tie. Is it?
I know, it is good to get dressed up again, isn't it?
Oh my God, I'm sick of wearing trackies.
All right, Sally, thank you for coming on. We're so thrilled. So today, I guess the first question is around how you're feeling. You're Lord Mayor of Melbourne. CBDs are particularly impacted at the moment. How has adversity that you've experienced in the past, how has it prepared you for what you're going through at the moment?
Well, great question. And we've all had different forms of adversity in our lives. I don't think I've ever experienced anything as professionally extreme as this. And these are circumstances for which there really isn't a rule book, as everybody keeps saying. I've never said the word unprecedented so many times in my life before. So, I'm very mindful of that. But personal and professional challenges over a very long life and career have really helped me with a couple of things. One is perspective. I think perspective is great, and certainly even as we're facing as a city challenges every day, and I spend a lot of my time speaking with people who are experiencing a lot of devastation. The sense for me personally of having perspective and reminding myself to be grateful of certain things in my life to help balance out the more difficult things is really important, and I certainly do have that perspective. And I've been in ups and downs in many parts of my life, so I think that perspective is important. The other thing, of course, is that out of prior experiences of adversity comes resilience. And it's not just for me, but so many of the stories about Melbourne as a city, as an economy, again, have experienced those ups and downs, and the resilience and the resolve that we've shown as a community and as an economy, it's there. And that gives me a great sense of encouragement and confidence that we can do it again. Melburnians are really great for rallying when it counts. And so those two things of perspective and a good sense of resilience certainly help me dealing at the moment in very extreme circumstances.
So is that mentally what pushes you on? You know, that I guess that sense of perspective, you know, really do you consider that one of your major drivers in really pushing ahead through these challenging times?
Yes, well, I'm a natural optimist as well. I'm very much a glass all the way full kind of person. And that really comes, I think, in terms of that theme of perspective, is a sense that there are lots of options. And I'm somebody that I don't tend to focus so much on the things we can't do. I'm always looking for the things that we can do, and having a sense of options is really important. And of course, for a very mature city like Melbourne, very, very strong foundations, great global perspective and renowned globally, it does give a good sense of options. And I think the other thing about optimism and the way forward and what helps drive me is just to focus on outcomes. Every time we can deliver, even on something relatively small, if it helps change one business owner's day, life experience, one resident's situation, different senses of what the future holds for the broader community. If we can change and get an outcome in any way, small or large at the moment, that really helps me put another stake in the ground with that sense of momentum to the future. So those things also help me in the day-to-day turmoil that is stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne.
Melbourne being a global city, surely we're getting some global attention. Are you dealing with other mayors or Lord Mayors from other major cities around the world? And who have you found the most kind of support or idea sharing with globally or here in Australia?
And we are doing that regularly. Every 2 weeks, a network of 45 mayors from around the world catch up. And I also get to participate in Bloomberg's Mayors Program, which happens once every 3 weeks. Unfortunately, they're all at midnight or 2 a.m, but I don't mind because they're such important conversations for us to be learning from the experience of other cities, but also to be able to share our experiences because, you know, that two-way dialogue is important for ongoing relationships. And we've seen so many other cities going through adversity, certainly much more than we're experiencing on the health perspective. We've seen cities that have reopened and then had to lock down again. And again, the conversations do bring perspective, as we were talking about earlier. I actually come out of most of those conversations feeling very lucky to live in a country where we have a sense of coordination across 3 levels of government, where we have relatively high levels of trust between the community and government, particularly at the moment. Other mayors are amazed at how our community has responded to restrictions and on the whole are following those so closely. And I feel a great sense of pride when I get that feedback. But of course, getting ideas from other cities, knowing what's worked and seeing how we could apply that to Melbourne, and also what hasn't worked and learning from those mistakes is really important. And it's a treasure trove really of all of those sorts of ideas and inputs.
So Melbourne is halfway through what is hopefully our last and final lockdown, and myself and most people I speak to are now looking at what the world and the city looks like post that lockdown. We have a few questions about what your plans are for the Melbourne CBD when we reopen in September and what that looks like. A lot of things that we looked back at was postcode 3000 that radically changed Melbourne CBD back in the 90s. And it went from a 9 to 5 precinct to a 24-hour city where people started living into. What ideas from that era are we going to be borrowing or using to get get the ovens back on and get the city back?
Well, we certainly are looking at lessons from the past and also trying to incorporate as much new thinking as we can. And Postcode 3000 has for decades now been regarded as one of the most transformational urban renewal policies in the world. People would come and visit from other cities to understand it better. And we have gone back to people who were involved in developing Postcode 3000, from the councillors at the time, the executives at the time, and people who are involved in the initiatives to understand what still applies. And so much is true. I mean, a big part of the pulse and the vibrancy of Melbourne is about our residents. And we went in the late 80s from just a few hundred residents in the Hoddle grid to now tens of thousands of residents in the Hoddle grid, and they underpin so much of our economy and community. So we're certainly looking to understand how can we welcome more residents into the city of Melbourne, and we feel we've got great capacity for that, with still big urban renewal areas, precincts was the word I was looking for, in Arden and also at Fisherman's Bend. We also learned from Postcode 3000 that, again, back in the 80s, you weren't allowed to have tables and chairs out on the footpaths. Can you believe that? Now something that we are renowned for in terms of the cafe and restaurant culture spilling out onto our streets. Was a twist that Postcode 3000 introduced 3 decades ago. And COVID and the particular set of circumstances means that certainly until we have a vaccine, our outdoors is going to be perceived and is safer and easier to manage in a socially distanced world particularly. So how do we do more of that? How do we bring more of what happens inside our cultural institutions, our restaurants and our workplaces, and bring them out onto the streets and into civic and park spaces? So outdoor Melbourne, to join the 24/7 Melbourne, is certainly one of the themes we're looking at going forward. Just to touch on a couple of new things, again, this is a big conversation with many of the mayors. There have been ambitions we've had as a city around sustainability and climate action, around affordability, around inclusion. How do we make sure that the new thinking and we use this seismic shift that's been COVID-19 to really accelerate our progress towards those big ambitions and put technology and those ambitions right at the centre of how we move forward.
I love that big thinking. You know, I think this is such a good opportunity to move forward in a really different way. I guess one of the really interesting things that has happened during COVID has been homeless people have had shelter. You know, you're very involved in homelessness and policy around that and affordability. You know, what are some of the things that you think will change for Melbourne's homeless people following the end of COVID?
Yes, and in the words of the Oracle Homer Simpson, it's a crisis-opportunity, and there's no doubt that this time has seen some swift and rapid action on issues that previously were seen as conundrums that were just too hard to crack, and homelessness is definitely one of those. Every rough sleeper in inner Melbourne has now been offered and in accommodation with support services, meals every day. And something that we'd been hoping to achieve 6 months ago is now a reality. I accept that it's temporary accommodation for the moment, but we've really hit a new threshold here. And so much of that was the crisis and leaders and community organisations saying we absolutely now is the time to prioritise that values-based decision-making and leadership, to prioritise the most vulnerable in our community and actually make something happen. And with the state government stepping in, particularly with funding, and with the circumstances meaning that a lot of hotel and holiday accommodation was available, and that rough sleepers wanted to move beyond perhaps some of the distrust that existed between them and institutions and levels of government previously. All of those circumstances and many more coming together with swift and rapid action to see the situation change dramatically. And we cannot go back from here. I mean, homelessness is unacceptable in a country like Australia, and we can't allow this great progress to revert back post-COVID. And so there are a lot of efforts underway at the moment to make sure that that doesn't happen. But it is a reflection of all of us and who we are as a community that we've been able to achieve that during such an extreme time. And I'm proud of all of us in terms of what we've been able to achieve to address that issue and support people when they're at their most vulnerable. And it says a lot about who we are. And again, it's those elements that give me confidence about the future.
Back to the conversation about outdoor Melbourne, there's a lot of talk about bringing street food back into the city, and Flinders Lane being externalized and the laneways popping. But also there's a lot of questions and discussion around liquor license laws and relaxing those liquor license laws to encourage more F&B businesses to invest in Melbourne and bring that activity back on the evening at nighttime. Is that something that you're directly involved in? And do you have an opinion on it if you're not? Yes, we are directly involved in all these discussions. And look, the perspective of all of this is that reactivating our city economy as quickly as possible when appropriate has to be a focus and priority for so many of us. And it's been great to see many leaders across the sectors stand up and get involved in these challenges. Certainly the experience of other cities is that it's the rate at which you can reactivate that becomes very important. Of course, pre-COVID, we'd just clicked over $104 billion as our gross local product here within the city of Melbourne, about a quarter of the state's economy and a significant driver of the national economy as well. And the longer the lockdown goes on, the more difficult it is becoming for so many businesses to survive. And we need to make sure that we can put appropriate resources into reactivation when we're ready to go. It's also, I think, a really important element of the city economy to note that 84% of the businesses located in the city of Melbourne are classified as SMEs. And so we do have really big sectors like our knowledge sector, professional services and financial services that create those really strong platforms and sense of opportunity. But it's also that wonderful ecosystem that brings the SMEs together, all of the retail and hospitality, creative and cultural organisations that makes Melbourne so distinctive. And we have to find ways to keep making sure that that ecosystem can thrive. And of course, so much of the employment comes from those businesses. So let me just say, we used to have 950,000 people coming in and out of our city every day. Our pedestrian count is the lowest ever on 41 years of gathering the data. We're 90% down on year numbers, and we have to find ways to build that up again. There are two main ways that happens. And look, we'll leave residents for a moment because they are the heartbeat and they're all out there working from home in the city. But over and above that, workers coming in and out of the city represented just over half of those numbers. So how do we get workers to come back after months now of working from home and contemplating, many of the larger employers, that they'll keep people at home for a while longer yet, and everyone will be naturally cautious. So we're working very closely with state government and public transport providers because PT has been key to so many other cities
revitalising with workers coming back, and of course a sense of safety in the city, so our clean city, as clean as it can. Of course, making sure that there are hospitality businesses and retail businesses that can open their doors again is vital. So, Zelman, to your question about liquor licensing, about extending outdoor dining on our footpaths, about cutting red tape so that businesses can grow and morph their business to respond to the new extraordinary that we're expecting in the city of Melbourne. All of those aspects are currently being considered. We've had lots of requests and ideas from business. How can we improve planning processes? Can we work with them to talk to state government about not just planning reforms, but tax reforms? Same to the federal government. So many levers that might need to be pulled. But our focus is really on how do we bring people back into the centre of the city, because they are the lifeblood and they are the customers. They are the cash flow for all of these businesses. And that's why we've made sure that we've kept our budget for major events and festivals. We've also kept our budget and capacity to support other organisations that run activities. We've been renowned as a city of events, not just major events, but events of all shapes and sizes. And that told us that up to 15% of those businesses have either already closed or are considering not reopening again. And they are worrying signals as to the state of our city economy, and really motivate us to keep doing as much as we can with other levels of government through this survival phase. As I said, lots of planning underway, and we're making sure we've got resources for the revival. But at the moment, the focus is really on supporting businesses to hang in there during this difficult period.
There's going to be a lot of businesses, as you said, are not going to come back, and retail vacancies in the Melbourne CBD is going to increase. It's inevitable. We're already seeing that. Is there a position or a strategy on how to avoid that, minimize it, and plan by the council to ensure that the businesses keep rolling through the stores?
Yeah, so there have been a number of measures, everything from the grants program to particularly our focus in the small business grants have been to support businesses into online activities so that they can maintain some cash flow and keep some staff whilst fulfilling online orders or takeaway orders. And those grants have been really well used as businesses respond. There have been there are rates, hardship policies, and we've also done a zero net increase in rates for this financial year. Anything we can do to ease the burden. Retail and commercial vacancies are already showing that they are rising. And this is worrying for us because retail and hospitality are absolutely interlinked as a central offer here in the CBD. In any one day, it's almost even in terms of spending between the two sectors in normal circumstances. And we know that empty shops have a devastating impact on surrounding trade as well. So there is that ripple effect. So we're encouraging anybody that does need help, particularly if you've got a shop front or responsibilities around those bricks and mortar as tenants, to contact our business concierge team. We've gone from a very small business concierge team at the City of Melbourne to now having hundreds of people trained and ready. We've done more than 10,000 outreach calls during this period of lockdown to provide assistance.
With your experience on the Property Council, what are your views on the Code of Conduct? And is government doing enough to also support the landlords that are not collecting any rent, and some of which are really struggling with the lack of income? Do you feel that there is a fair balance looking after both sides?
It's a good question because, as we keep saying, now is a time of extremes, and codes of conduct are terrific when people follow them. And I think the code of conduct also sets a stream of the sort of goodwill and expectations around behaviours. It's the culture that we're looking for, and it is a give and a take culture because everybody's situation is ultimately quite individual, and so blanket codes of conduct will never be an answer to everything, but they do set the tenor for the way that we hope people will respond in those individual circumstances. Every day I am speaking to people who either feel very threatened and not supported from a tenant's perspective, where they feel that landlords are using their powers to intimidate or are not listening and being unduly harsh in a situation where they've got no cash flows. And the very next phone call could be a landlord who is understandably reliant on the income that they're receiving from their tenants, and they're having conversations either with uncooperative tenants or tenants that just can't pay. It's such a challenging time, and I think what the Code of Conduct is about is saying we need to find ways to keep talking, to keep trying to resolve issues, of saying that we respect and understand the different positions that players in the market find themselves in, and we're hoping that there are guides there as to what is expected, but otherwise there are processes there for mediation and getting good outcomes. I mean, the fact is, and we all know this, we need each other. We all need each other, and we need this to work. And those that have capacity at the moment, we're expecting a bit more of, and those that don't have capacity, we have to give more to.
Someone who works in the CBD, like myself, and who's very passionate about the Melbourne CBD, particularly the retail market, I can tell you firsthand that when you took over as Lord Mayor, there was a sense of just someone who was in charge, who was a lot personable, approachable, and just kinder to be around, and it's made a massive impact on the CBD. And I think you've done a wonderful job, so thank you. But what's next for you? Now that you've conquered this role, what's your next one?
Oh gosh, conquered. Look, 6 months ago, we were having a completely different conversation about Melbourne, one of the fastest growing cities in the world. It was all about growth and how do we harness that. Now we face a city that really is on its knees. This is not a situation any of us want to be in, and it's taking a whole new set of skills, drawing on all of our networks and relationships, and a different sense of leadership, if you like. It needs as much energy and as much commitment and dedication, but it's a different world in which we're operating. So I really feel like we're a bit behind the line at the moment, Zelman and Nerida, and there's a really long road ahead. As I said, I'm a natural optimist. I feel we can do it. But it's really head down and just working as hard as we can to reinvigorate, revitalise this marvellous Melbourne that we've loved, and make sure we don't miss the opportunity, not just to go to a new normal, but to get to a new extraordinary.
Just to finish up, Sally, if you could just talk us through what you see as the biggest opportunities over the next 12 months. We know there's going to be a lot of challenges, and it's going to be really, really tough. But what do you see as the big ideas and the big opportunities going forward?
Yeah, well, this is a time to be thinking of big ideas. I know that there is so much of everyone's day is actually thinking about survival and adapting during this time, but we absolutely have to take this seismic shift to identify the big opportunities. 60% of our city economy is driven through the knowledge and professional services sector, and we take that as a very strong foundation. What can we do to continue to not just grow that, but really take the opportunity to leapfrog? That includes things like new strategies around attracting headquarters to Melbourne, to making Melbourne the most attractive place to do business, and efforts and initiatives into attracting more than our fair share of global talent, because talent brings talent as well. So we have a number of ideas underway, working with the sector to do our best in that regard. We do think we need to look as well as to what are the new industry skills and jobs that can really drive our economy into the future. Now is the time to reorient. We've said for ages that we want technology to take a lead on where our economy goes, and this gives us the opportunity. I know within the City of Melbourne as an organisation, our City Lab, which is where all our data research and technology sits, has gone from being almost an afterthought to playing an absolutely central role in how we're looking at rolling out programs into the future. And we need to continue to we've got to amp up our efforts around things like smart city, using technology, supporting our startup sector, and we're also looking at social entrepreneurialism as a sector that can drive not only economic outcomes but help us solve some of those societal and community conundrums that we've had for a long time. There's going to be a lot of need in our economy and community. We're seeing that already with unemployment rates. So let's use this opportunity to drive benefits that have people employed and helping them realise their potential at the same time as driving a very important economy, not just for Melbourne, but for Victoria and Australia.
Sally, thank you for coming on. I'm sure I speak for a lot of people that, we feel like we are in safe hands having you as Lord Mayor, and speaking today, it does sound like a very exciting future for the City of Melbourne. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, stay well, and thanks so much. Great to see you.
See you, Sally. Bye.